Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. The movie begins with a little girl reading a children's storybook. In the next scene, we see a young girl named Kayla reading a book titled Darkness Hides Inside a Car. Meanwhile, her younger sister, Maddie, scares their mom with her zombie doll. Let's call their mom Laura. She asks her daughters to behave properly. Meanwhile, Laura finishes loading items into her car. It turns out this family is heading off to spend their vacation in a remote cabin. However, her husband has to stay in the city a bit longer due to some urgent work. Laura is frustrated with her husband's decision, but Sean reassures her that he will come as soon as he finishes his work. Reluctantly, Laura and the children have to leave without Shin. After a long journey, they finally arrive at a forest gate that leads to the cabin they're headed to. Laura tries to open the rusty lock on the gate. A moment later, a car arrives, and a man named Owen steps out of the vehicle. He introduces himself as the nearest resident and helps her unlock the gate. Owen reveals that not many families live around here. He also mentions that a family has been living in their cabin for years, but suddenly, they left when their son, named John, went missing in the forest. Owen says that John was somewhat slow to think, and the authorities never found him. The man then asks if they are the only ones on vacation, but Laura explains that her husband will also be coming. After this, Laura heads to the cabin and notices that the name John is carved into one of the wooden planks. They finally arrive at a beautiful cabin by the lakeside, located in the heart of the forest. The children hurry to explore the place, while Laura receives a call from Sean. He says he'll be a little late. At that moment, Sean is buying a music box as a gift for his daughter and wine for his wife. After finishing the call, Laura enters the cabin and places the zombie doll on the table. Meanwhile, the children are playing on the swing outside, and we can see just how far the villa is from civilization. Suddenly, while playing outside, the children spot a red rope in the distance. Curious, they begin to follow it and end up deep in the forest. Soon after, when Laura finishes her activities, she checks for her children but can't find them. This makes her worried, and she heads downstairs to search for them. However, suddenly she hears a loud noise outside, and it turns out to be the sound of her daughters arriving. They quickly head to their room, and Laura sees Kayla hiding something in the drawer. Mom asks what it is, and Kayla says it's a gift for Dad. As night falls, Laura reads the horror storybook that her daughter brought, but Maddie seems to be feeling unwell and wants to sleep. Mom then takes her children upstairs and tucks them in. After that, she goes outside to smoke. Suddenly, the cabin's phone starts ringing. It turns out to be Sean, who has called her several times, but she hasn't answered. Laura apologizes and explains that her phone was left in the car. Sean tells her that he will be there in a few hours. A moment later, Laura hears some branches snapping in the distance and gets the feeling that someone is watching her. Feeling uneasy, she decides to go back inside the house. After a few hours, Kayla wakes up. Kayla says that something is strange with Maddie. This situation worries Laura, and she quickly goes to check on her daughter. It seems like something is lodged in her throat. With her mother's help, Maddie quickly vomits a small piece of ribbon with the word "hello" written on it. The scene then shifts to the past, where we see the children following the red string. When they reach the middle of the forest, they notice that someone has set up a table with food and drinks on it. They are delighted to find this tea party and quickly grab 2 cakes to eat. Back to the present, Laura quickly realizes and asks Kayla what she was hiding earlier. It turns out the cakes were from the forest, and they reveal that Kayla had kept some of the cakes for their father. Mom then asks Maddie if she ate one of the cakes and insists that she'll tell the truth. Mom starts to cut open the cake, where she finds a strange liquid and a small ribbon with the words "goodbye" written on it. Realizing they are in danger, she tries to call the police using the house phone, but the call gets disconnected. At the same time, they hear a loud thud from upstairs. The children are frightened and ask what's happening, but Laura reassures them that everything is fine. She then grabs a kitchen knife, goes outside to retrieve her phone from the car, and tells her daughters to stay inside. Laura manages to reach her car, but she doesn't find her phone that she had left behind. Terrified, Laura rushes back inside, grabs her daughters, and tells them they need to leave the house immediately. They rush to the car, but suddenly hear maniacal laughter, and someone throws a stone at the car window. They continue to get in the car, and Laura drives off to leave the area. But unfortunately, the car's wheel suddenly comes off, and they crash. Now, they are left without a vehicle. They rush back into the house and lock the door. Kayla, frightened, asks, "Where's Dad?" Mom replies that he will be there soon. At that moment, they hear constant knocking on the front door. Laura goes to investigate and finds a family photo taped to the outside of the window, with all the faces scratched out, except for hers. After seeing this, Laura quickly takes the children upstairs. Maddie is still vomiting, and her condition is getting worse. So, Laura decides to take a bold step. She tells them that they will go outside to get help for Maddie. Just then, Maddie looks out the window and suddenly says that her father is here. Laura peeks outside and sees a man in the darkness. The man waves at them before leaving, and Laura realizes that it is not her husband. In the next scene, Sean arrives at the forest gate and finds that the gate is jammed, and he can't open it. He suddenly notices a note on the gate attached to a red string, which says, "Follow me." Sean is confused and calls out for his wife, but then he hears his phone ringing in the middle of the forest. Someone finally picks up the phone, and all that can be heard is heavy breathing. He thinks his wife is playing a prank on him, so he follows the red string as instructed in the note. Sean continues walking, growing more frustrated. He calls Laura and tells her he's tired, and they can prank him tomorrow. Then, the call abruptly ends. He tries calling Laura again but hears his own voice coming from the other end. He then notices a bright light in the distance. As he follows the light, he finds Laura's phone on a table. The phone is surrounded by 4 wooden mannequins, which have been set up for a party. But then, we see a masked man, wrapped in bandages, emerge from behind him, holding an axe, ready to strike. Meanwhile, at the house, Maddie's condition continues to worsen instead of improving. Mom advises her daughter to be brave, and reassures her that she will be okay, and that their father will arrive soon. Suddenly, they hear a loud noise throughout the house, so Laura takes her children downstairs to investigate. Someone then knocks on the door, causing the children to become frightened. A moment later, they hear Sean's voice outside calling for Laura, and she feels relieved that her husband has finally arrived.
Tapi tetap mengambil pisau dan menginstruksikan anak-anaknya untuk tetap di dalam.
However, when she opens the door, she is shocked to see a recording device hanging by a string, with Sean's voice coming from it. And then, suddenly, Sean's lifeless body falls from the roof, his eyes gouged out. This horrifies poor Laura, who is overwhelmed with fear. She cries uncontrollably, holding her husband's lifeless body close to her. Hearing her mother cry, the children rush to see what's happening, but Laura stops them from coming out. They continue to watch their father's body from a distance, and then they start screaming in horror. But Laura lies, telling them that it's all a trick, and that the body isn't their father. Suddenly, all the lights in the cabin go out, making the situation even worse. Laura grabs a flashlight and a knife, as she prepares to leave the place on foot. They finally leave the house, and on their way, they find dolls that resemble them, a woman hanging by a rope, and 2 children on swings. Suddenly, someone starts throwing eggs at them relentlessly. They quickly rush back into the house and lock the door. Laura blocks the front door with furniture to prevent the killer from reaching. She then grabs the book, Darkness Hides, and shows the drawing made by the masked man. Laura is shocked as she sees the drawing of the 2 girls playing on the swings with herself in the middle. At that moment, large dolls are thrown at the window. Laura quickly takes her children upstairs and locks them in a room. She lies on the floor, looking through the gap under the door. The poor mother then begins to cry, and her daughter hugs her to comfort her. After a moment, Laura remembers that her husband's car must be nearby, and decides to escape with her children. She tells her daughter to hide in the closet, while she goes to get the car keys from her husband's pocket. She gives her daughter a watch, and promises to return in 20 seconds. Laura bravely walks outside alone to retrieve the car keys from Sean's pocket. She then tells the children that they are leaving now. But as they go downstairs, they hear someone else's presence in the house. Laura screams and forces the intruder to reveal themselves, claiming she has a gun. A moment later, she looks out the window and sees Owen approaching their house with a flashlight. Laura bangs on the window to grab his attention, but the thick glass muffles the sound from outside. She then uses her flashlight, and eventually, Owen notices her. But he couldn't understand what she was saying, and here's what happened next. The masked killer suddenly approached him from behind and quickly killed Owen with his axe. Witnessing the tragic event, Laura became increasingly desperate to protect her children. They quickly went downstairs, where they found a zombie doll and a storybook on the table. She discovered a new drawing inside it. They quickly went downstairs, where they found a zombie doll and a storybook on the table. She discovered a new drawing inside it. With determination, Laura opened the front door so they could all leave in Sean's car. And at that moment, the killer captured Laura and left, while her daughters screamed in fear. The poor children then hugged each other and cried for a long time at the loss of their mother. They realized that they needed to save themselves. Kayla bersiap mengambil pisau dapur, jikalau si pembunuh. Kembali beberapa saat kemudian, mereka mendengar lagu anak-anak diputar di luar, dan percaya itu adalah ayah mereka. The children nervously walked outside and were relieved to see their father's car, but there was no one inside. They noticed the car's trunk moving, and when they opened it, they found their mother tied up with her mouth gagged inside. Suddenly, the masked killer appeared and attacked Laura. He then chased the girls with the car, forcing them to run back into the house. They quickly rushed upstairs and hid under the bed. Shortly after, the masked killer entered the room, searching for them. He checked the closet, but didn't find them. Then, he sat on the bed and calmly told the children there was no need to be afraid, introducing himself as John. He says that he was raised in this house long ago, and has been watching their family every year when they come for their vacation. He's always been here, waiting, but they never noticed him. The psychopath confessed that the book originally belonged to him. He deliberately left it behind, so they could find it and understand his story. John explained that there was darkness surrounding them, but it wasn't just a story, it was real, and that darkness was him. This terrified the children, as John suddenly lifted the bed and quickly sedated them. The next morning, we see Sean's eyes and arms grotesquely attached to a wooden mannequin. It seems this psychopath intends to assemble a family of mannequins, using the body parts of their real counterparts. Here we see Laura, still alive but severely weakened, with an axe lodged in her side, struggling to cling to life. John pulls the axe from Laura's body and walks away. He then heads to the area with the mannequins, arranging them in a grotesque display, where Laura's family, constructed from their body parts, appears to be having a tea party. He drags the two unconscious sisters into the forest, and he begins measuring their eyes and hands to carve wooden mannequins. After some time, Kayla regains consciousness, but pretends to remain unconscious, because John is nearby. She tries to wake Maddie, but the little girl doesn't react. John's plan is to remove one of the wooden mannequin's hands, and replace it with Kayla's hand. When John is about to sever Kayla's hand, he hears the sound of a music box playing in the distance, which piques his curiosity. John begins to follow the sound and discovers a teddy bear, along with wine and other gifts scattered on the ground. He continues forward until he realizes that the trunk of his car is empty, and he discovers the music box playing inside. He gazes at it in awe, but then Laura appears behind him and attacks him with an axe. The deadly fight continues, and Laura manages to injure him severely. He is thrown back and howls in pain. After a hard-fought struggle, Laura finally incapacitates him and stabs the psychopath with his own. Back in the forest, Kayla finally wakes up. The children see their mother, who is injured, running towards them. The three of them embrace each other, crying uncontrollably. In the final scene, Laura and her daughters get into the car, while John lies on the ground with the axe in his back. Finally, they get the chance to live and drive away. However, a moment later, Kayla looks back and notices that John's body is no longer there.